Hello my friends and welcome back. Today I'm going to introduce to you my top 5 Modern Montblanc 149 nibs. The bodies are generally similar. The mold is pretty much the same. 149 has really not changed much since they were introduced. Occasional special editions such as the 100th anniversary Orient Express, the 90th anniversary were there, but overall their fit in the hand and their overall shape is the same. We can see that the most drastic change is the 100th anniversary. So I'm not going to go into that because everyone can have their own preferences. For the record, my preference goes to the Orient Express. Extremely beautiful. And of course, there's special and limited editions that are way above the price that I can afford. So I'm not going to comment on those, but go into the preference I have to the nibs on these 149s and which ones I prefer. I'm going to rank them from 5 to number 1. Before I get to the top 5, however, as is customary, we're going to look at my couple of honorable mentions, show a quick example of what I like about each pen. So the first honorable mention goes to the 100th anniversary 149 with a double broad nib. This is very similar to oblique double broad, but the double broad nib is more conducive to writing in English, and I don't fall for that whole calligraphy appeal of the 149 with oblique nibs. This double broad I feel is very well suited for writing English alphabet, especially doing the printing. I'm not a good printer, but if I were to write an A, I feel like the double broad nibs on 149 give very nice crisp lines, almost like a cursive italic, without a lot of sharpness of the stub nibs. The nib is very well put together. It has the usual bevels up on top, as is customary for 149 broad and double broad and triple broad nibs. Extremely nice writer. It is excellent daily writer if you have good paper, and it's a very good signature nib. So this is my first honorable mention. Second honorable mention is the Modern 149 with usual medium nib with a twist. There's really nothing that replaces the customization of a nib that you can achieve for your writing. This was my opportunity to get this. So what I did was I, at Orlando Pen Show, got Matthew Chen to grind this medium nib to a extra fine. When you write right side up, and then to write an architect when you write upside down. So to demonstrate, and then backwards, I'd say this is a good broad architect. The ink in here is Pilot Black. It's an okay black. I put Pilot here because this is not my most used pen, and it does very well. It flows. I haven't used this in many days and still writes right out the first stroke. So that's the number 2 honorable mention, and number 3 honorable mention is my own handiwork. This was another Modern 149. This was actually this was a fine nib that I ground down to extra fine. I tried to get this as sharp as I could at the time, and while trying to stay as smooth as possible so that it's not toothy, and I really liked the outcome. So it's around the same size as the line wise as the one that I got ground by Matthew Chan. What's special about this pen is that it has the platinum Chukuro ink in it. I know that we are very reluctant on using this ink on our more precious pens. I thought, why don't I experiment? I've had this ink in here for maybe 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks, and I have not noticed any problems. It does write from the first stroke on the paper. The ink is not fussy. The ink writes very well, and then once you're done, it's pretty much waterproof. It's really hard to get off the paper, so better not spill it on your clothes and stuff. One thing I found is that the Platinum Chukuro, as much as it's marketed as super black, if you write with extra fine or extra fine nibs, it still gives that usual gray problem that all black pens and inks may have, save for Aurora Black that I've tried recently, which actually does maybe a little bit better than the Chukuro. Nonetheless, this nib works very well for me, and the nib on here puts out very good ink. The ink does not dry on me and works very well. Of course, this is a modern pen with the plastic feed, and I've had no problem. If I did, I'd pull this out. It's friction fit. I'd pull this out and just wash it and flush it. The one thing you have to keep in mind is that the Chukuro is notorious in becoming basically particulate when you add to tap water. So if you want to flush the pen, please make sure that you use distilled water, not tap water. So those are my honorable mentions. Now coming down to our top 5. What I'm going to do is start at number 5. At number 5 pick, I have the oblique triple broad nib, which is a free nib exchange through Montblanc service. If you buy these from the stores and the boutiques, you may hear very frequently that oblique triple broad is not a free nib exchange, and it's a bespoke option, which is around, I think, like $1,600. That is only true of 146s. On 149, the oblique triple broad is a complimentary free exchange within the 6 weeks. Unless you have a numbered pen, then you have a year to do your nib exchange for free. So I had my 100th anniversary exchange to oblique triple broad, and I had the Orient Express exchange to oblique triple broad, and I actually purchased the 90th anniversary with an oblique triple broad nib. This was my first oblique triple broad, and it's one of the very best writers. So let me just compare these two quickly. It seems like their oblique triple broad nibs are basically molded from by the same person or machine. They're very similar. At the end they have these bevels that makes them extra attractive. Overall, the performance within the 3 oblique triple broads that I have are pretty consistent. The one thing I did notice that all 3 of them, when I got from Montblanc, because these were new pens, they don't ink them, so they dip them and it works, so they send it to you. They say they test it. That's not how it works. When you get these, tines are a little bit tight, so you might have to spread the tines a bit apart so that they work. The 90th anniversary was done, I think, about 10 years ago, so it was, when I got it, it was new, but out of the box it wrote a little bit better than these, but these with minimal work write very marvelously. So I'm going to demonstrate now with the oblique triple broad. Different ink, of course. This has Montblanc Emerald Green. Very nice nibs, very juicy, and I've had no issues with them. So this is my number 5 on top. 5 149 modern nibs. Number 4 is the Montblanc's usual extra fine nib that again you cannot get right off the bat. You have to get your pen and then send it to them. They do an exchange. So I've picked 2 of these out of my collection to demonstrate. Again, these are pretty consistent across the board. The modern 100th anniversary one is pretty similar to, in terms of writing experience, to the usual. The modern 100th anniversary is pretty similar to the modern gold version and the platinum version. Again, the nibs are usual 149 nibs. The mold are. The 100th anniversary has special decorations. In terms of writing experience, let's experience. Very pleasant to write with. If somebody asks me that they're into medium and fine writing and what is the one pen I would recommend them get, currently I would get the modern 100th anniversary 149, which is very beautiful nib and it's commemorative. And the nib, the extra fine nib on this is pretty much unmatched. The extra fine nib on M1000 is a little bit softer and a little more scratchy and it gets out of sorts easily. There are no other good modern extra fine nibs that I would say compare favorably to the 149. The extra fine nib on the Japanese 743 and 845 are much finer than this. The fine nib on 823 is probably a little finer than this, but it's not as pleasant to write with as this. This is between fine and medium 823 in terms of line width, but between all the 3 of them I would say this is the more pleasant pen to write with. I do have the medium and the fine and the broad and double broad 823s. I like them. I like this one more. So this made it to my number 4 of my top 5 Montblanc 149 modern nibs. So thus far we have had number 5, which is the oblique triple broads. Number 4, which is extra fines. Number 3 is something you cannot get in the store. This is the platinum 149 in an extra fine nib with an unfortunate or fortunate story, depending who you ask and what circumstance you're talking about. This was an extra fine nib, as I like extra fine nibs, that unfortunately got damaged. So I transplanted this nib into a Conid bulk filler with the flexible neck factory housing. The housing wasn't fitting well, I guess, so this nib was sticking out a bit. So when I twisted it, the tongue twisted rightward. Luckily I have the tools to straighten it back up. When I straightened it back up, it was imperfect, but it's still very nice. Since I do have other extra fine nibs, I thought I would do a little bit of modification. So what I did was grind this to a little bit finer and bent it forward to give me a little beak like that. Again, it's not perfect, but this is very pleasant to write with, and compared to my extra fine factory nibs, this is actually a little bit much finer, not a little bit. And the ink here is Aurora Black. The good thing is that when I bend the nib, I can now write a double broad architect when I turn it around. Generous ink flow, so if I want to fill forms and fill boxes, this will work just fine. So that was the unfortunate lemon turned into awesome lemonade. If I look back over the past 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks since this happened to me, I will notice that this is the pen I have used the most, just because of how nice and smooth it is, and the angle it gives me when I write with it is very precise, and the fineness of this is unmatched by the extra fine even. So it's very nice. I love this. I don't want to do this to my other pens, of course, myself, because I'm not an expert at bending nibs forward. I know 2 experts that do this, Kirk Spear and Matthew Chen. So that was number 3. Going back, this number 5 was the oblique triple broads, number 4 was extra fines, and number 3 was the beak, or the SHAK, the bent forward nib. So number 2 is a very special nib that, while not commonplace, can be purchased through Montblanc. This is their bespoke option. So Montblanc has like 15-20 bespoke nib options, and for me, I have a couple of favorites. I do have the 6B nib here. It took about 2 months for them to get this done and back to me. This is the 90th anniversary nib. So they do save their stamps for these nibs for up to 10 years, I'm told. And they were able to do this exchange for me. I'm not going to right now say how much this cost me, because I think my wife may be looking at this video and I still want to stay in this house. But it's not very cheap. What Montblanc does is look at your writing angles on a video, and then they try to customize this nib to your writing. And this nib lands at number 2 because of how much fun it is to write with, and it can write from anywhere from a fine line to a 6B. So I'm going to just start writing casually. I'm not going to maybe write a little bit of printing. This is called a signature large nib, and it's no joke. Not only can I do this, now I can turn it on the side, like this, and then write. The thing I like the most about this nib is how fun it is to write with, but also how consistent it is. They have made these channels on the underside. They've laser cut some extra capillary channels that are not like slits all the way through, but those channels communicate with the actual ink feed, so they do direct ink to the tip of the nib. It writes very well. It really never hard starts, never skips, anything like that. So if you press hard, then it can railroad initially, but I have really not had problem with this nib, and it is a lot of fun. It's good to impress others with your signature. No one can replicate the writing of this nib. No nib can. And if you're working in the line of work I do, no one can fake a prescription that was written with this nib. So very, very much fun. Of course, very expensive also, but this pen was a medium. Lands at my number 2 favorite spot of all my Modern Montblanc 149s. What pen do you think takes the cake for a number 1 spot? That brings us to number one, most favorite Montblanc 149 nib in the modern iteration. That goes to the flex nib. That's unfortunately extremely scarce. It's not easy to find. And as you see, this is the Orient Express. The Orient Express pen does not come with the flex nib, but I did have a Montblanc 149 with the flex nib, and then it's easy to unscrew the nib section from one and put in the other modern 149. This flex nib was introduced around 2019. It was briefly produced, still found some places, but in boutiques pretty much all over the world. I don't see one when I look for. Occasionally you can see on Virtual Pen Show, on online auctions and so forth. And they're not cheap, of course, but definitely compared to the regular 149, this is a very, very special pen. If you can find it around the same price and maybe with a little bit of premium, it's definitely worth it. This lands at my top choice for the Montblanc 149 nibs, and I will tell you the reason for that right now. So the reason is that I'm actually very interested in fine and extra fine writing, actually mostly extra fine and extra fine, hence all the grinds I do. This pen is actually designed to write around 0.3 millimeter line, which is like a Japanese fine, about a Japanese fine, yeah. So this does lay a extra fine line right off the bat, so it gives you a 0.3. If you notice, I didn't even mention the flex part of this nib. It does flex up to like 1.5, 1.6. I have a video I will link here. You can see I tested this and compared it versus the Pilot flex nibs. But to me, this is a soft nib. I don't use it as flex because I really like how fine it writes and how smooth that fineness is. And it's really unmatched by other nibs. The problem Montblanc had with these nibs is that when we buy flex nibs, we expect them to flex like a good flex nib, and the 18 karat gold and the geometry of this nib are really not conducive to that. And over time they railroad and they misalign and cause a lot of warranty issue for Montblanc. They used to offer this as a bespoke option, which they have discontinued since, because to their eyes, most people that buy this flex nib expect it to flex, duh, and the nib is actually not designed to do that. So keeping those limitations in mind, I have been using this as an extra fine writer. So let's do a little bit of writing with this. You can see that I can write flex with this pen with no problem. I've used this for a while, and as long as I am conscientious on how much I flex it, because it's not made so that the feed touches the paper. Outside of that, it does actually pretty good at flexing out of ink. I put Diamine Oxford Blue in here. It's my favorite blue ink. But as I said, what makes this nib my number one top Montblanc nib is that, first of all, it writes extremely fine, 0.3 millimeter fine lines, and then it can flex and give me some line variation if I need to. If I really need a good flex nib, I use some other flex nibs that are made for that purpose, the Fountain Pen Revolution, the Magna Carta Max 600, and so forth come to mind. So this is not really made to be a true flex nib, but for my purpose, my handwriting practice, and enjoying writing, there's really no other Montblanc 149 nib that beats this. The extra fine nib that I have ground for myself come very close, but they do not flex. So this is soft, bouncy, and flex. And if you have experienced the Pilot Custom Urushi, you do wish that that flexed a little bit. That one is not a flex nib, so what I did with this nib, I would never do to Custom Urushi, because that is not made to do this. It's gonna get out of sorts, and the nibs for Custom Urushi are going to cost you $1,400 or $500, depending on what market you buy them at. So those are my top 5 Montblanc 149 modern nibs. And we had honorable mentions, and then the last one I'm going to show is no different in terms of the nib. This is a Conid bulk filler king size with my top number 1 Montblanc 149 nib, which is the flex nib. This is the wild tiger version of the Conid bulk filler king size. I have this inked with Montblanc Olympic Red. So for me, that if I were to just carry 2 pens with me and go out, these will be it. Beautiful pens, awesome Orient Express with a transplanted nib, very, very awesome Conid bulk filler king size, will never run out of ink, with my favorite top Montblanc 149 nib. Of course, these are my opinions. I know that Montblanc is a very controversial brand. Many people love it, others hate it. I like Montblanc 149 pens. I like some of their 146s as well. And I wish that we all got to try these. And if I go to one of these pen shows, I will certainly bring these, and my friends are more than welcome to try. And this is not a comparison with other brands, of course, but I do find these to be some of the top writers. If you would like me to compare these to any of the other pens in my collection, please do cast a vote. Tell me what would you like them compared to. And before ending this video, I'm going to tell you that I am going to do a top 5 vintage 149 nibs and pens, and that will be coming up sometime in the future. I hope that you find this interesting, entertaining, and maybe informative. Please do not hesitate to ask any questions that might arise. I wish you all a good day and a very, very happy upcoming new year. Goodbye.